of us know the story of, in John chapter 2, of Jesus turning water into wine. I don't know what you know about this story, but when I was younger, when I heard this story, the only lesson that I was told was that this was Jesus' first miracle. The only lesson that I was told was, that Jesus has the power to do cool things. Jesus has the power to turn water into wine, and this is the first sign. Therefore, his disciple and some of the servants believe in him. So those were what I was told. But as I got a little bit older, and I read my Bible, and I listening to things and read other books, and when I saw this, when I understand the meaning of this, it's actually so much more than that. It's much more deeper. It's much more profound. There's so much more meaning in this story, in this miracle. So what I want to do today is to look at this passage, and as just to dig this passage, to look at this and see what is God trying to say to us. But the title of the message today is Save, Restore, and Cleanse. Save, Restore, and Cleanse. And since this is a story about a wedding, can you look at your neighbor and ask them, what is the best wedding that you have been to? Look at your neighbor and ask them, what is the best wedding that you have been to? What is the best wedding that you have been to? All right. For me, the best wedding that I have been to was my own wedding. Right? Right? I think every married couple will probably say that, that their wedding is their favorite wedding, right? Because you are getting married, right? That's probably my favorite wedding. But the next wedding that I'm looking forward to is Soul wedding. I don't know when, but I'm looking forward to Soul, maybe Soul and Muller wedding. I don't know. All right? Not together, separately. All right? But okay, right, so we see that this story or this passage, especially in John chapter 2, it is about a wedding. It is about a celebration. And in fact, when we look at our Bible, we see that there are a lot of stories, there are a lot of illustration. There's a lot of metaphor that is about wedding, that is about celebration as well. And the reason for that is to show us that the God that we worship is a personal God. The God that we worship is a God who wants a relationship with us. The God that we worship is a God that wants to be involved in our life. He is a God that, He's a God that, in our life, He's a God that cares for us. He's a God that celebrates with us. He's a God that, loves us. And we see the Bible give many metaphors about this. We see that the Bible shows us that God is a shepherd that looks after his sheep. We see that, Jesus is someone that is a friend that laid down his life for his friend. We see that God is a father that provides for the children. But most intimate of all, we see that, God is, rather Jesus is someone, Jesus is a bridegroom that loves his bride, that saves his bride, that cleanses his bride, that purifies his bride, that come, on earth for his bride. That's what we see that here. And, one Bible commentator, he made this profound statement. He said this. He said, the Bible begins with a wedding and it will end with a wedding. It began with the wedding of Adam and Eve, where God was involved in the wedding. God made the wedding possible. God, created Eve for Adam to get married to. And we see that God is the one that brought Eve to the man, to Adam. And also that, in Revelation, we will see the final wedding, the bride of Christ being united with Jesus again. So we see that the Bible ultimately, it begins with a wedding and it will end with a wedding. And we see that when Jesus in the gospel, we see that Jesus tells many parables using the metaphor of a wedding. Jesus talked about the wedding banquet where a king sent his servant, to those that are invited to come, right? Because the banquet is ready, the party is ready, the celebration is prepared for them, and all they need to do is to come into the party and celebrate. We see that Jesus tell us the parable of the 10 virgins, the 10 women in a wedding, getting ready to meet the groom. So we see that in the Bible there are many metaphor and parable about wedding and about celebration. And it shows us, it portrays us that God is intimate with us, that God wants a relationship with us, God cares for us. And what we are going to see here in this passage is that this is not just about Jesus turning water into wine, but this is about Jesus saving us. This is about Jesus restoring us. This is about Jesus cleansing us. So there's three things that we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how Jesus saved us, restore us, and cleanse us. So let's look at the first point. Jesus saved us. Verse 1 and 2 tell us this. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciple had also been invited to the wedding. So here we are told that Jesus and his mother and some of his disciples, they were invited to a wedding in Cana in Galilee, right? And in those days, wedding are a huge celebration. In our day, when we get married, we celebrate evening, probably in the afternoon. But we have a service in the morning, and then in between we go and take some photos, and then in the afternoon we'll come together and we have the celebration and we eat together. But in those days, wedding doesn't just last for a day. Wedding doesn't just last for one afternoon, but wedding lasts for the whole week. For the whole week, they would celebrate, right? For the whole week, they would, have this party. For the whole week, they'll celebrate this couple. And we see that, and one of the reasons for that is because in those days, wedding is not just for the bride and the groom, but wedding is for the family. Wedding is for the community as well, where the community would come together and celebrate the fact that these two families are united together. Right? And also in those days, the way you live your life is not just, you don't live your life for you, but you live your life for your family. You live your life for your community, and your purpose and your identity and your significance is based on your role for your community. It's based on your role for your family. It's based on what you do, right, for your family. So a wedding would have been a huge celebration for them. And not just that, but for wedding in those days, it means that the groom and the bride, they are kind of saying by getting married, they are kind of saying that they are now adult. They are now part of society. They are now part of the community. They are to be respected member of their community. So wedding would have been a big celebration for them. And because the wedding lasts for the whole week, it is also the groom, his role, his responsibility is to make sure that there is enough food, there is enough drinks, there is enough wine for all of the guests for the whole week. Can you imagine getting married in those days, right? I think it would be a headache, especially if you're a groom. If you have to prepare that much food, right? If you have to prepare that much wine or that much drink, right? You have to prepare so much, It will be a nightmare, but that was the tradition back then. And we are told that something horrible is going to happen to this couple. Something horrible is going to happen to this family. In verse 3, we are told that when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." So here we are told that they have no more wine. Now, when we read that, we probably say, so what if they don't have no more wine, So they can just drink water, They can just drink Pepsi, right? Or they can just drink Sprite, right? They can just drink, milk or something, right? So what if they run out of wine? It doesn't mean anything for us. But in those days, to be running out of wine would cause you a huge embarrassment. Not only it will cause you embarrassment, but it will cause shame for the family, right? And people would have bad gossip about you. People would have say mean things about you. People would have said, "Oh, do you went to this person's wedding or that person's wedding?" They run out of wine on the second day. They run out of wine on the third day. I think those of us that are from a Burmese and Korean background will probably understand that. Like for example, if we were to invite people at our house and maybe a service at our house, a celebration, a worship service, a Thanksgiving service at our house, and all of a sudden our food ran out, right? Our rice ran out, our curry ran out, right? We'll probably feel very embarrassed about it, right? We'll probably feel very ashamed about it because we didn't prepare enough food for the guests that we invited. In the same way, in those cultures, it was worse. Right? Because your honor, your dignity was based on the fact that you have prepared enough for the guests. In fact, one Bible commentator, he said this. His name is D.A. Carson. He wrote a commentary on the Gospel of John. And this is what he wrote. He wrote this. He said, "To run out of supply will be a dreadful embarrassment in a shame culture. There is some evidence that it could also lay the groom open to a lawsuit from relative of the bride." So here is that it actually what he's saying here is that it would have been embarrassing for them. It would have been shameful for them. Not only that, but it could get so serious where the groom will be sued by the bride relative, right? So the point is this: to run out of wine is not a small issue. But it was a big issue. It was a big problem because it could ruin their reputation. It could ruin their honor. It could ruin their name, right? It could ruin their faces. And I want to pause here and I want to ask you this. What about you? Has there anything that have happened in your life where it causes you to feel shame? Has anything that happened in your life where it causes you to feel embarrassed? Is there anything that you have done in the past or maybe the things that you're currently doing that it could lead to not just you but your family being ashamed, right? It could lead to the damage of your family reputation, right? Is there anything that happened in the past, And maybe there are things that happened in the past. Maybe we did something. Maybe we say something. Maybe something happened to us out of our control where we feel ashamed over it, where our parents feel ashamed over it, where our family feel ashamed over it, right? But the point is this. Jesus came to save us from our shame. Jesus came to save us from our guilt. Jesus came to save us from our embarrassment. And D.A. Carson, he continued to say this. He said, Jesus' first miracle takes place at a wedding. And it is designed to prevent serious social embarrassment. So what we see here is that Jesus' first miracle is not just about Jesus turning water into wine, but it's about Jesus saving the family reputation. It's about Jesus saving the family from embarrassment. It's about Jesus saving the family from shame. And the point is this: Jesus have also saved us from all of our shame. Jesus have also saved us from all of our embarrassment. Jesus have also saved us from all of a bad reputation. Maybe bad things that people know about you or bad things that people are saying things about you. Jesus have come and he saved us from all of those things. And that's the first point. The first point is this: Jesus saved us from shame and from embarrassment. And the second thing is that Jesus come to restore our joy. In verse 3 and 4, this is what we are told. He said, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not yet come. Right? So we're going to come back to what Jesus is saying here, but I want to move on to verse 5, because verse 5, this is what his mother responded after that. Verse 5 said that his mother said to his servant, do whatever he tell you. Right? So here, regardless of how Jesus responded, regardless of what Jesus said here to his mother, we see that his mother, she sees something different in Jesus. She knows that Jesus is special, right? So she said to the servant, do whatever he tell you to do. And here we are told in verse 6 and verse 7, we are told that there was a jar, 6 jar of water that was to be used for washing. But Jesus told the servant to fill it up with water, and he filled it up with water, and it turned into wine, but not just any wine, but it turned into the best wine ever. You know, I heard a lot of people use this passage, right? Use this passage and say it's okay to drink wine, it's okay to drink alcohol because Jesus turned water into wine. But to that I will say this: yes, Jesus turned water into wine, but we didn't see it. It didn't tell us that Jesus was drinking the wine, right? So it's not an excuse, it's not a justification. But anyway, what we see here is that in verse 11. This is what it said. Tell us about the miracle. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the sign through which he revealed his glory, and his disciple believed in him. So in verse 11, we are told that this miracle is the first sign, right? And the question is, out of all the things that Jesus could have done, why did Jesus choose to do this? Why did Jesus, the first miracle, he could have, for his first miracle, he could have healed someone. He could have opened blind eye. He could have, get someone to walk again. He could have, resurrected someone. But for the first sign, why did he did this? Why did he turn water into wine? And the reason why he did this is to show us, he's showing us who he really is. He's showing us his true identity. Have you guys write an essay before? I'm sure all of us have, right? Yeah. When you write an essay, sort of your introduction, right? Your introduction is about everything. In your introduction, you tell us about everything that you're going to write. When we read your introduction, we understand what the essay is going to be about, what the essay is going to be like. In the same way, the first miracle that Jesus did here is teaching us, is showing us what he is going to be about, right? So Jesus is not just that Jesus is saving us from shame and embarrassment, but what we're going to see is that Jesus is restoring our joy. Jesus is making sure that we can rejoice in him. In verse 9 and 10, this is what we're told. It said this, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that has been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from. Through the servant who had drawn the water knew. He called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone bring out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now. So here we are introduced to a banquet, the master of the banquet. And the master of the banquet, his job, his role is to keep everybody happy. His job, his role is to make sure that the wedding go well, to make sure that there is enough drink, there is enough food, there's enough wine for all the guests, for the wedding guests. And here, it seemed like he doesn't even know, he doesn't even realize that his wine was running out, right? He doesn't even realize, he wasn't even aware of that. But regardless of that, Jesus helped him out here by turning the 6 jar of water into wine. And when Jesus did this, the fact that Jesus turned water into wine, what Jesus is showing us here is that Jesus is the true master of the banquet. The Bible talk about there's going to be a banquet, in heaven. There's going to be a feast with God in heaven with Abraham. And what Jesus is telling us is this: his job, his role is to invite us to this banquet, is to get us all into this banquet so that we can have joy. And the thing is, if Jesus didn't do anything here, if Jesus didn't help the family out, if Jesus didn't help the couple out here, their joy will turn into shame. Their joy will turn into grief, right? There's going to be no more joy at this wedding. And so he restored all of that. And so the point that Jesus is trying to show us is that Jesus can restore our joy. In both Isaiah and Revelation, it talk about on the last day, God will wipe away all tear and death will be no more. And there's going to be a big celebration in heaven. And the truth is we don't have to wait for that day because we have Jesus. And when we have Jesus, Jesus is the source of our joy. Jesus is the giver of our joy. Jesus is the reason for our joy. And what Jesus is trying to show us in this passage is this: if there are anything that is running out in our life, if there's anything that is lacking in our life, all we need to do is to go to Him. You see here in verse 2, we are told that Mary went to Jesus and Mary informed Jesus that they have no more wine. In the same way, when we are running out of joy, when we are running out of peace, when we are running out of happiness, when we are running out of things, all we need to do is we need to go to the feet of Jesus. We need to tell Jesus, say, Jesus, I'm running out of this. Would you help me? I'm running out of this. Would you save me? I'm running out of this. Would you restore me? And He will gladly do so because He is the source of our joy. He is the giver. He is the giver of our joy. We live in a world where our joy is so much, is so much depending on what is happening around us. We live in a world where our joy is so much depending on our circumstances, depending on our result. If we get the grade that we want, and then we can have joy. If things going the way in our life, then we have joy. If we have the friend that we need to have, and then we have joy. But what Jesus is trying to show us is that this joy that Jesus gives, it doesn't matter what our circumstances is. It doesn't matter what is happening in our life. Right? It doesn't matter if things are going well or not going well. It doesn't matter if things are happening the way we wanted or the way we hope for. Because we have Jesus, we have the source of joy. Because we have Jesus, we have the giver of joy. Because we have Jesus, we have the reason why we can be joyful because of Him. Because of the fact that we have Him. Because of the fact that we love Him. Because of the fact that we are in a relationship with Him. Right? So Jesus, He will see here is that Jesus is someone that restores our joy. And the third thing that we're going to see here in this parable is that we see that, this story, is that Jesus is someone that cleanses and purifies us. In verse 6, this is what we are told. He said, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jew for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. So here in verse 6, we are told that when they were running out of wine, the things that was nearby was this water that was used for washing, right? There was a ceremonial washing, it tells us, right? And back in those days, the Jew will always have a type of water that was for ceremonial washing. Right? Because every event, before they would go to any event, before they go to any party, before they would even eat something, they would wash their hand in a way that they were told to do. It was a ceremonial washing. It was in a way that they would wash it to purify themselves so that they can be cleansed to enter the party, to have the food or to have the meal. And more than that, what is telling us is pointing us to our spiritual need. It is pointing us to the fact that God is so holy, God is so perfect, God is so just. It is pointing us to the fact that we need to be cleansed, that we are sinful, and the only way that we can get to God, the only way that we can be in His presence, if we are first cleansed, if we are first purified, and Jesus. By turning this water that was used for washing and turning it into the best wine, what Jesus is trying to show us, what Jesus is trying to tell us is that He can also wash us clean. He can also purify us. Right? We might see ourselves as just something that we might see ourselves lowly. People might see lowly of us. People there's this water. This water that is washed. Nobody want to drink this water, Nobody want to go near this water. This water is to wash your hand and to wash your feet. You don't think about this water. You don't value this water, right? And Jesus is showing us that He turned this something that seemed useless. He turns something that seems so low. He turns something that nobody cared about into the most, the best. In the same way, when Jesus washes us, when Jesus cleanses us, when Jesus purifies us, he can turn us into a new creation. He can turn us into a new person, right? And I think that is why, I'm so excited for next week baptism. Right? I think we should be so excited for, next week baptism, right? Because that is a symbol of that. Right, the fact that we get into the water, the fact that everybody that is getting baptized, the fact that they get into the water is symbolized. It symbolized that Jesus have washed them clean. Jesus have cleansed them clean. Jesus have purified them, and they're not the same anymore. They're not the old self anymore. They are a new person. They are a new creation. Right? They are somebody, God's son and daughter that are loved, that are beloved, that have value, that have dignity. Maybe in the past you will feel low about yourself. Maybe in the past you will feel like you're nothing. Maybe in the past you feel like you're little things. But when you have been washed, when you have been cleansed, when you have been purified, you are son and daughter of the Lord. You are son and daughter of the Most High. And that's what Jesus is trying to show us here. So Jesus is trying to, in this in this story, in this first miracle, first sign, Jesus is showing us that he is here to save us from all of our guilt, to save us from all of our shame, to save us from all of the things that we are embarrassed about. The truth is there are things that we are, there are things about what we did in the past that we feel ashamed about. There are things about what we did in the past that we feel embarrassed about. But what Jesus is showing us that I've come to save you from that. I've come to purify you from that. I've come to cleanse you from that. Not only I've come to purify you from that and cleanse you from that, but no, I've come to restore you the joy again. I've come to restore your happiness again. I've come to restore you again. And the question is, how is Jesus going to do that? So how is Jesus going to save us from our guilt? How is Jesus going to restore our joy? How is Jesus going to cleanse us from all of our sin? Well, the key here is in verse 3 and 4. We're going to go back to verse 3 and 4 in John chapter 2. In verse 3 and 4, this is what we are told. I'll read it again. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." And look at how Jesus replied. Jesus said, "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." So just in my note here, in my note, it tells us that when Jesus said woman, right? I'll just read it here. And the Greek for woman does not denote any disrespect. In other words, when Jesus called his mother woman, Jesus is not disrespecting her. I think in our English translation, it can seem like a disrespect, especially if you call your mother a woman, right? But in the Greek, the translation is more of madam or more of my lady, right? So it's not a word of disrespect, right? So, but Jesus is saying something here. Jesus also said this, right? My hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come. What does Jesus mean by that? What does Jesus mean by my hour has not yet come? If you read the Gospel of John, we actually see that Jesus actually talk about this quite often, talking about, my hour has not yet come. But toward the end toward closer to the end of the Gospel of John, we see that Jesus began to shift the tone, and Jesus began to say, my hour is near, my hour is near. And toward the end, we see that Jesus say, my hour has come, right? So for example, in John chapter 12, verse 23, it tells us this. Jesus replied, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. And John chapter 12 again, in verse 27, it says this, now my soul is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I come to this hour. So what does it mean when Jesus say, my hour is here or my hour has come? Jesus is referring to his death here. So when Jesus said to his mother, "Mother, my hour has not yet come," what Jesus meant is this: mother, or woman, rather, he said, "It is not time for me to die yet. It is not time for me to go to the cross yet." And when we look at that, it seems a little bit weird. Wait, this is a wedding, you know? This is a wedding. Why is Jesus talking about his death? Why is Jesus talking about the cross? Why is Jesus talking about that? And the reason for that is this. And as we said earlier, this miracle is not just about turning water into wine, but it's about saving the family from shame and embarrassment. It's about restoring joy. It's about cleansing us and cleansing them. And so what this means is this. What Jesus is trying to tell us is this. Because of our sin, it always leads to shame. The source of our shame is our sin. The source of our embarrassment is our sin. The source of us losing joy is our sin. The source of our dirtiness, right, our unholiness, our unrighteousness is our sin. And what Jesus is telling us is this: in order for me to save you from all your guilt, from all your embarrassment, from all your shame, in order for me to restore your joy again, in order for me to, cleanse you, I have to deal with your sin. And the only way I can deal with your sin is by dying on the cross. And so what we see here is that Jesus is saying to us, right? Jesus is saying, I have to give up my life. I have to die a horrible death, right? And so that we can be forgiven, so that we can be cleansed, right? So that we can be restored, right? So that we can be purified, right? So the question for us is this: Jesus have already done that. Jesus have already went to the cross and paid for the price of our sin. And the question for us is this: is there anything that we are hiding from him? Is there anything that we are doing or we are thinking? Is there anything that is still causing us to feel ashamed? Is there anything that is causing us to take away our joy? And whatever it is probably has to do with a sin. It's probably have to do with a hidden sin. It's probably have to do with a sin that maybe nobody knows, that maybe nobody aware of. But what we are told to do and what we can do is that we can bring it to Jesus. And when we bring it to Jesus, just like Mary saying they have run out of wine, she bring the problem to Jesus. When we bring our problem to Jesus, when we bring our sin to Jesus, when we bring the source that is causing us to feel shame, the source that is causing us to feel guilty, the source that is causing us to lose our joy, the source that causing us to feel so yucky, so disgusted, whatever, if we bring it to Jesus, he will purify it for us. He will cleanse it for us. He will get rid of it for us. He will restore the joy of salvation again. All right. So the worship team can come up. So the miracle that we learn here in John chapter 2, right? It's not just about Jesus turning water into wine. It's so much bigger than that. And the reason why he turned this water into wine, what is showing us is that Jesus has come to save us from shame and embarrassment. Jesus has come to restore our joy and to restore our celebration. Jesus has come to cleanse us and to purify us. But what we need to do is we need to go to him and we need to tell him. All right? And as we worship God today, right, for the rest of as we worship God, as we sing to God, whatever burden that we've been having, whatever it is that we've been feeling guilty of, whatever, it could be big thing, it could be little thing, It could be, problem at home. It could be a problem at school. It could be a problem with your friends. It could be whatever it is that is causing you to lose your joy. Why don't we just go to Jesus? Why don't we just lay it all out on the feet of Jesus? And he will restore, and he will cleanse, and he will save, and he will get rid of it for us. Amen? Amen. So we'll all get up and worship